Tim, we're live.
We are live? All right, thank you. All right, let's call to order. Quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. This commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from municipal code, the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, districts of historical, cultural, archaeological, architectural significance, and to promote the preservation and appreciation of historic sites and structures. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in chapter 21, section 806. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. Okay, next item on the agenda is roll call. Just designate your presence by unmuting yourself and saying aye. Bill Williams.
Aye.
Pat Zeno.
Aye.
Kim Finch.
Aye.
Bobby Collins.
Aye.
Wilfred Scott.
Aye.
And I am Tim Leahy. I'm the chair. Bobby Collins, did I get you? No, Bobby Collins.
Aye. You got me.
There we go. I did? Okay, good enough. It's out of order on my cheat sheet. Okay. The chair. With us, we have staff, Roberta Lehner, Historic Preservation. On our own assistant chief. Also, we have Cheryl Wood, who is our new counsel, and also Joel Kuwait, who is in the Office of Law covering our commission as well. Finally, we have Tammy Hook, our recorder, who keeps us doing things by the book. Right, Tammy? Thank you. The commission is authorized to require the oath to testify, and this is done en masse. It includes applicants, staff, consultants, and any members of the public who seek to enter their comments regarding the applications, which will be heard in this public meeting. If you intend to testify, raise your right hand, or just say, please, do you affirm under the penalties?
Where'd the chair go? There he is. Bad buffer.
Tim, you're on mute.
I had a hiccup, and when I come back, I'm on unmute. All right, so I was in the process of asking if we're going to testify this evening, affirm under the penalties of perjury, the testimony given in the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief. The Groys are the only ones really on the call right now that just need to acknowledge that. Can you unmute them and allow them to say yes? Okay, I'll take that as a yes.
Right, I will. That's John Tower.
I will, Roberta Lehner.
Okay.
So Tim, I don't know if Mr. Groy knows that he supposed to. I guess he's waiting for you to tell him. Can you say it again? Maybe he didn't hear it.
Sure. Dave, are you on? Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
I think, Ryan, can you promote
This is Dave Groy.
Okay, hi, Dave.
Hi.
Are
you still there?
No, it looks like we lost Tim again. Let's take a second. There he is. He's back again. You're still muted, Tim.
Yeah. Hopefully this, so Dave, we're just asking you to respond that you will.
I'm sorry, you're really breaking up. It's hard to hear you.
We are, is that okay? Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry, yeah. It's all jarbled.
Uh-oh.
So Ryan, it sounds like Tim's having a problem.
Yeah,
I can hear you just fine.
we can hear you,
Yes,
Roberta.
it appears that the chair is falling in and out, and he kind of keeps leaving and then popping back up. So I'm not sure what's going on.
I'm clicking in and out. Let me try something. Okay, I'll be right back.
Can everyone hear me all right?
We can, Roberta, Gail, and Dave Groy.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Look,
Sometimes it's me, but not this time.
it's Tim's turn tonight.
No,
Oh, okay.
Roberta, you're loud and clear.
Yay.
Yep.
All right. Keep trying this. Is that any better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. For the Groys,
What
can you
is
hear me? all
gaming
right?
in the other room?
Yes.
Okay, great. Did you hear what I asked about affirming? This is a requiring an oath when you testify that you affirm that the penalties of perjury apply and that your testimony and the statements you shall give are true to the best of your information and knowledge. Please respond by saying, I do.
I do.
Yay, thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is announcements. Roberta or anyone else, any announcements?
I don't have any particular announcements.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have two meetings, May 12th and June 9th. Does anyone have any changes or questions?
I have one item, and that is for May 12th, under announcements. If we could just add Tammy, she explained that the HPC took HPC, it's 100 and 101. Okay? 2 courses. Correct, everyone?
Yep.
You took 2 courses.
Yes.
And
That's all.
And then you said HPC, but I think you corrected the minutes. You told me it was SPC, but that's not correct. It should be HPC. Roberta?
I'm trying to hear you.
Okay, so when we talked, you said SPC. Should it be HPC?
Yes,
And then you also added another sentence that said, and hope to take HPC 102 ethics this year.
correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Which is a reminder to everyone, that is the agenda item on the administrative meeting next Thursday, a week from Thursday. Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes
So moved.
from 5. Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is violations.
Mr. Chair, we need to vote.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstain? Any abstain? Okay, thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is violations. Any violations to report?
We have a new violation of installation of French doors without HPC approval and also partial replacement of a foundation. And but the contractor is in the process of submitting a public hearing application. So that's under control.
Yeah, okay. What's the address, Roberta?
3 Cathedral.
3 Cathedral. Okay. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is consent docket. This is a procedure to expedite certain applications before the commission. In order to be considered for the consent docket, the application must have received recommendations for approval with minor conditions from all city staff and technical advisors. Also, there needs to be no public opposition to the application. If an application is approved on the consent docket, the application does not need to testify further and is free to go. But please remember that you must still obtain necessary permits from the city prior to commencing work. The following application is eligible for the consent docket this evening. That's 94 Duke of Gloucester Street. It does not have any conditions on it. I just need to ask if there is anyone present to oppose 94 Duke of Gloucester Street. Okay. For the Groy's benefit, this process is necessary because we always have to ask if there's any opposition to something before we put it on the consent docket. Also, this is a relatively small project, but for your information, Roberta may have already told you this. Administratively, Roberta can approve certain things, but this one happens to be on a contributing building, which is an important building, and therefore we need to see it. And also, it's not exactly a replacement in kind. That's just for your information why you're here. So I'll accept a motion to approve 94 Duke of Gloucester Street on the consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstain? All right. So it's approved. And thank you to the Groys for coming. And you may go and complete your project. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
All right. We have no other new business on the agenda this evening. So we can move to pre-applications. We have two, and the first is East Street. I can't remember the address.
65 East.
Terry Averill. So Terry, if you can unmute yourself.
All right. Hi, everybody. Do you need to see me? I can turn off.
And we have the drawing. You sent a one-page drawing with the old and new, right? So I think we have that. So you don't need to present. And some of these other meetings, people actually present. But I don't think we need to do that tonight unless you're prepared to do that. I don't know how to administer that, but.
If you needed me to share, I don't know if that happens with Zoom. I know I usually can share my stuff, so it might be actually easier, but that's up to you.
So Tim, real quick.
If
before we
you're
get
able to
started,
share and you're comfortable.
Sure.
do your pre-application.
What's that?
Do your
Okay.
pre-applications. Yeah.
I sure will. Terry started screen sharing. So the pre-application, thank you again, Tammy. The pre-application is a preliminary review allowing the commissioners and staff to review issues related to the feasibility of a project and provide guidance on potential compliance or lack of compliance with design guidelines. It's solely an accommodation to the applicant, and comments, the pre-application, are in no way to be interpreted as an approval of the process of the project. Terry, do you acknowledge this, the nature of this review?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. I can see your screen. Can everyone else?
Yes.
Awesome.
Probably just easier because I got my little hand here. I can kind of circle through everything.
Great.
Excuse me. Terry is very muffled on my setup. I wonder, Terry, if you can move closer to your microphone or something. Everybody else has been very clear, so I'm thinking it's your end that is the problem.
Okay. Well, I'm as close as I can get without.
Okay, you're better. You're better now. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So for 65 East Street, you may have picked up on this if you've looked at the drawings. There's an existing concrete deck, and I'm kind of just showing you where it is. And you can see it in the image over here. It's a sloping concrete patio. And at the very back, it's a little hard to see here. I can probably just get a little bit bigger here. So you can kind of, in this image, what the owner wants to try and do is there's an areaway going to the basement right here, and they have to kind of put this white 2x4 structure over it to act as a table, but there's almost no yard left when they go to do that. So they asked me to come up with some sort of scheme that would make this more decking much more livable on this backside. It's not particularly large, as you can see from the dimensions. You know, you don't even have 9 feet on this side to the wall of the house. You have roughly 12 or 13 feet. The property line, it's an assumption on our part because I had the site plan from 63 East, so I was able to establish where this line is. Right now, there's a kind of a curve. It's all broken up, and it's barely 18 inches wide running this way past the buildings on Pinckney. All right, so when I talked with the owner and came up with a scheme, we basically decided to raise the ground so that there would be fewer steps. Right now, there's a bunch of steps that lead up to the side door. And we raised this deck here. And then it means it's about 2 steps above that, what I was saying, that 18-inch curve. And what we decided to try and do to just lighten everything is to use some type of greenness in this area. We're using decking partly so that it's a little better from an impervious standpoint. And we're trying to raise it up so that this areaway I can use almost like a trap door to get down to the basement. That way there's a little more space for them to actually operate on top of this. We're hoping, the other thing, and I've kind of tried to show, there's a new fence proposed along this area with a gate. You can kind of see in this image, this would be along the street. And then the ground does slope up. And you can kind of see in this image, this would be the deck where the areaway was, stepping up again to a deck that's near the side door going in the building. We're basically doing a wrought iron fence, and there's a fair number of them around. I just showed 2 that are in the neighborhood. And it's pretty simple kind of fencing off, but I wanted it to be pretty open, particularly if there's plantings and things behind it. If you all have any questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Real quick, it looks like there's an awning too. Is that what that
The
shows?
idea was if we can get some type of either a roll up, it would be a movable awning, so that in the west side, it's kind of facing mostly west, so that if we can attach some type of bracket with either a rolling out piece, that would be really helpful for those windows and also for their use of the back. I didn't want it to be a permanent thing, partly because I think it's too cumbersome on the building, but.
Terry, are you looking to keep the concrete that's under the new patio in place or remove it?
That was part of the equation because we want to make sure that water can go through. Right now, the whole site's covered with concrete.
Okay.
What's the decking material? It might be on the drawing, but I can't.
It'll be a wood deck. It's either going to be an EPA or it's going to be a treated wood, but it'll be something where water can pass through it. We hadn't really looked at the costs, but obviously it's going to be wood of some sort.
Okay. It's certainly the most irregular lot I think I've seen.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions? Anybody? Roberta, do you have any comments?
Just that current zoning for lot coverage will be considered one of the reviewers ultimately, just to make sure that lot coverage isn't exceeded, which it looks like it already is. And in a final application, we would need some clear views of that side entry.
Okay.
When Terry first approached me about this, I said, well, thank goodness we don't have another request for a parking pad. So I was glad to see someone asking for more livable space. And I can run down the guidelines that I had noted. Did you want me to do that, Tim?
Yeah, I had one. Yes, I do, please. But one other quick question. Terry said there was an areaway that was covered by that plywood thing. Is that areaway kind of going to be covered up, and that's not an issue, I assume?
Yeah, it will be like a trapdoor because they need to be able to get to the equipment that's in the basement.
Okay, so it'll be a trapdoor. Okay, that makes sense. All right, thanks. Okay, yeah, I was making some notes to Roberta, so you go for it with
Okay.
the laundry list.
So
a tiny
I
project with
note,
lots of guidelines.
you probably can add to it. I have C1 landscape design and materials, C6 fences and other landscape features, C7 landscape lighting. Is there going to be any lighting, Terry?
At this point, the owner has not mentioned any lighting requests to me. I mean, there may be eventually, but I don't think within this application.
Okay, if there is, then it's C7 and D30. C9 landscape plants, D1 the Secretary's standards, particularly D9. D23 existing porches and stoops. D28 use of contemporary materials showing that you're not. And D36 awnings. How about you, Tim?
I think you got them all.
Okay.
One thing, Terry, about awnings is this free-flowing edge that is encouraged. It's encouraged, but it's your design. So.
Yes, no, that would definitely.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to also say it's very nice to see somebody carrying up one of these parking pads. When I take my Architects tours up Pinckney Street, I find that to be one of the most embarrassing things about the tour. I try to get them to look at, literally, I try to get them to look at something else like a cornice. So,
All right. Well, I'll summarize for the record. Again, what's the address? Sorry.
65 East.
65 East Street. It's an application to take up a concrete pad and replace it with a deck and put a new fence and a planter along Pinckney Street. And I think that the commissioners consider it feasible because it's in compliance with the guidelines, which Roberta just mentioned, a whole series of guidelines regarding landscape materials and all of the other guidelines that we just mentioned. So, all right, Terry, do you feel like we've given you feedback that you need?
Sure. Great.
All right.
Thanks so much, everybody.
We look forward to a full application.
Great. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is St. Mary's Living Shoreline, and I see Jay.
can I ask a question before we go further, Tim? Who is the applicant? As I read the materials, exactly who is the legal applicant for this?
We can confirm this with Jay, but it is the parish of St. Mary's
Okay,
who
thank you.
own the
Thank you.
Carroll House. Jay, you can confirm that.
Yes, and if I may, I don't know if you can hear me. I've got Don Jackson, who is facilities at St. Mary's Church and Schools with us, as well as Mr. Binstead from Underwood Associates, landscape architect on this, or the
Okay.
engineer.
All right. So they're with you in your office?
Yes, they are. I don't know what you're not saying.
Okay. Well, let me restate the pre-application process. Okay. Pre-application is the preliminary review allowing commissioners and staff to review issues related to the feasibility of a project and provide guidance on potential compliance or lack of compliance with design guidelines. Pre-application is solely an accommodation to the applicant, and comments at the pre-application are no way to be interpreted as an approval of a project. Jay, do you acknowledge this nature of this review?
Yes, thank you. I acknowledge.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not
All
sure
right.
that I'm going to work here. Can you see me?
Actually, we can't see you. I can't.
Can or cannot?
Cannot.
Huh. Start video. Hey,
There we go.
There we go.
thank you. Don Jackson. And Keith Vincent over there.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll go through this. You can tell us what you'd like us to know, and then we'll have a conversation. And as you know, we're trying to make this as somewhat like live, so we do have comments that I'll mention at the end. And I talked to email with Don. We won't read all the comments, they're extensive, but I will mention the names of the people who provided the comments. And then Don, I think, asked if you could respond to them. So tell us what you want to know, and then we'll have a conversation about the feasibility of the project.
Sounds great. I did not load this. I thought that came from your side. I apologize. Does everyone have this application, this package?
Yes, everyone's got it. We can all bring it up if everyone.
So I've got it.
All right, okay, great. So,
Oh,
yes.
by the way, I need to mention one other thing. Bill Williams will need to recuse himself from this application because he works with Jay.
Yeah, all right. Well, thanks. Yes, we'd like to talk about the Living Shoreline project at St. Mary's, 109 Duke of Gloucester Street. It's a project that the parish has been talking about since about 2007 in various formats. It's been developed by the Parish Environmental Stewardship Committee, which is tasked with and has the agenda of trying to do good projects for St. Mary's that help reduce our impact on the environment as a parish. We've done a number of things over the years. One of the more significant things that I like to mention is when we did a retrofit of our parking lot to reduce the stormwater pollution that was going into Spa Creek, reducing sediment, petrochemicals, and the like. So the project is an extension of St. Mary's desire to be good stewards of the environment. And certainly there are a lot of benefits to living shorelines. Coincidentally, though, the fact that I think we all recognize that flooding in downtown Annapolis is occurring at an ever increasing rate with sea level rise or global warming, whatever you want to call it. The city's spending a lot of time, energy, and effort trying to figure out how to deal with that. And certainly one of the benefits of living shorelines is that they help reduce or mitigate the impacts of increased sea level rise by giving those rising waters another place to go rather than up and over bulkheads and into the street and into adjoining businesses. So there are both economic and environmental benefits to the project. We think it's a great project that can be done in a way that is good for the city, good for the creek, good for St. Mary's as stewards, and does not adversely impact too much some of the concerns with the historic property of the Carroll Gardens, Carroll House that we're working within. The project has been under development for about a year with the Department of Natural Resources. We have a partnership that includes DNR, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Anne Arundel Community College, and has the support of the Severn River Association, the Severn River Commission, and the Spa Creek Conservancy. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. I think,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
I was gonna say, if you have nothing further to present or further, then I think we can start our discussion. Roberta, we usually ask you as staff to comment first. Would you like to?
Tim, if I may, I have pulled up, I can have the package on the screen if that helps. And we can walk through it if you like.
That's up to you.
I haven't figured out how to do it.
Okay.
Let's see, share screen.
Or the entire screen anyway, but you probably want to click on the PDF down below.
Absolutely not.
Down.
We're working on it. Give me 1 second,
That's
please.
fine. No problem.
Yeah.
And then share at the bottom. Right? Move. Got each roll.
Great.
Hopefully they can
Looks
see it.
good.
Got anything?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely.
I'll see if I can't make it bigger.
If you can make it bigger, that would be great.
Oops. Oops.
Let's see you.
Oh, boy.
Right, we need to spread that entire.
Yeah, great. Excellent.
That a little bit legible.
Yeah.
Just we thought I might touch base on the history of the site, which I think we all know. These are a series of Sanborn maps, but I'll just reiterate the history of the site in a truly outlined form. We know the Charles Carroll House was started construction in 1771 and 72, and the garden in 1773.
The house started a lot earlier than that. I have to interrupt, but never mind. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, maybe so.
1745. There you go. Go for it.
All right, 1745. And then the Redemptorists took over under the Charles Carroll's watch, if you will. There were a series of gardens. There were 5 original terraces. There was a full gardenscape and terrace that went from the house to the water. And in 1853, I believe that's correct, Tim,
Yeah.
the Redemptorists took over the property. It had fallen into, especially the landscape, disrepair and was overgrown. The Redemptorists basically restored the gardens, but they also added livestock and vineyards on the southern portion, the southern lots of the property. Let's see. Some historic photos, the dates are questionable, according to one of the, Mr. Warden. In 1775, under Charles Carroll, a seawall was built along the basically entire eastern edge of the property, 400 and some feet of seawall. And that was, it was called a seawall based on the report, the archaeological study and historic studies that I looked at. It was also primarily not just, whether it was a seawall at the water edge or not, some of our photos show that, but it was clearly to help retain earth. There was runoff. It was clearly to help these terraces, the garden terraces as well. And I think we actually have a photo. This is, I believe, and this is dated 1870. The date is maybe questionable. This is that seawall. Getting bigger. Since that redemptorist takeover, if you will. And the gardens have gone through a series of changes, where today there are gardens, there's primarily grass land. There are boxwoods, which weren't original, but are old. There's in 1948, they put a graveyard in the northeast corner of the property. Because of the degradation of the seawall and the ongoing erosion in 1984, approximately, they built a new wooden bulkhead along the property, the entire edge of the property. This is in early turn of the century, 1907. This is the seawall, the original seawall, we believe. And this became the bridge, a large concrete buttress. I found this is early 50s, which actually shows, after the Redemptorists have it, some terracing, some gardenscape. This area is where the vineyards and the livestock were, and this is the seawall. There is no seawall in that time frame along the southeast edge. Almost current day, 57, and then today. And today, I believe, if you walk the property, you can see a piece of the original seawall right at the abutment with the bridge. I think the project is, we can discuss it when we talk about all the letters, about some of the comments. But let's let Keith talk about the project itself, just an overview. Thank you.
Slide to that. Thanks. Thank you. I have Brody. So this is the current aerial of the site. So the proposal is to install a living shoreline on here, and obviously we're all discussing that. This was the image I was looking for. Here's the image of this, or aerial of the site with this red line you see is the location of that seawall delineated by the GPR report, ground penetrating radar report, that we've used to identify the location and depth of the seawall to the best of our ability without digging it up. And zooming in a little closer, here it is again overlaid with our current plans. I want to run through some of the aspects of the plans on the plan view, and I've got a cross sections on the next page. I'll flip back and forth a couple times. But in general, I'll try and keep it general. The engineering of this site, this design, is based on headlands and tombolos behind them, and embayments, which is the scalloped out shapes you see around here. And Scott Hardaway, a coastal geologist out of the Virginia Marine Institute of Science, VIMS, studied breakwater since 1985, probably 50 or 60 of them by now, and developed the stable embayment ratios that we've used to design this site here. When you establish these headland points, you can create a natural beach that's unprotected, and that's what we're aiming for in living shorelines. Now, on this project, obviously, there's the historic component, and so much of this shoreline, even though it's costly, is protruding out into the very deep water. So
a real quick question. What do the black spidery looking things represent?
These are these are coarse woody material, trees essentially, to help naturalize the shoreline, and they extend the headland points inland to help create that embayment ratio, make it a little more stable without having to, especially important here, because otherwise you'd need rock to go over that spidery tree looking shape. I should have made those green for this image.
Yeah.
But
And what are the little white lozenges?
these ones, so that,
Yes.
I'll scroll down. Oops.
Sorry?
Due to the deepness of the water, right off the bulkhead, it's about 6 or 7 feet right off the bulkhead and quickly gets out to 10 or 12 feet. So that's kind of a subaqueous underwater, below even your lowest of low tides, -2 or so, retaining wall essentially. A boulder wall, some sort of riprap or sandstone to contain the beach fill. So I've got 3 cross sections here. Here's A in the at the bend point, B in the middle here, and C at the end, just for context. So A and C are similar. They're in the embayment, although A has a filled-in embayment, so there's more shallow area for habitat and shoreline access. But to conserve budget, most of them are for between the headlands. You've got that retaining wall right at the base of the existing bulkhead. Another thing I want to point out here on these cross sections, this black box is the existing bulkhead. It stretches from positive elevation 3.5-ish, somewhere in there, 3 to 4 roughly for the entire length of the property, down to -6 and probably even below that to retain the land behind it. And then offset back about 8 to 10 feet is that historic seawall. It's not perfectly straight, it undulates a little bit. But as you can see in these 2 cross sections here, in cross section B, which is right behind one of the headland structures, one of the tombolos, the historic seawall there is still underneath the ground, underneath the proposed grade. And here in cross section C, it's just peeking out by maybe 6 inches or so, just exposed essentially, rather than prominent. So just to flip back to the red wiggly line, that's the historic seawall. In this middle section here, there's not as strong evidence of it. And then again, a tiny patch here, not as strong evidence, but this the darker red section is more evident. Let me see if I had anything else to mention in my notes. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to point out about the the existing bulkhead now, the 1982 or 84 wooden bulkhead is, we wouldn't be removing it in its entirety. We'd be trimming it anything that would be above proposed grade, and then below grade, all of that would remain. There's no reason for us to remove it, and it actually helps the stability and protection of the project to leave that in place. And I think that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Slide away again.
Do you want to just talk, have questions and answers, Tim? Do you want to go through our simple comments on the specific guidelines?
If you would like to present your view on that, and then I would have Roberta present her view on that.
Sure. Thanks. We did a general overview, and not didn't hit every one, but A1, town plan and focal points. I mean, there's no building being proposed, and we don't feel that the landscape, as important as it is, we're not really interfering with the existing landscape. The terrace remains. The water's edge remains. In fact, the water's edge, as it may fill in using this system, may in fact be what the water's edge was, or closer to what it was, before the bulkhead was put in 1775. The original water's edge. The views from the water, obviously we're still going to have a strict or well-defined water's edge on the entire perimeter. My notes here were incorrect because we are not removing the existing new bulkhead, nor are we touching the existing 1770s so-called seawall. In fact, with this new structure or a new infill system with the existing bulkhead, we think it protects the existing seawall to remain, for the most part, underground where it is today, except at the far north end. Landscape design and materials, C1. We're gonna use native species, species that can handle the brackish water and the rising tides. The Navy around the corner, I mean, their plan over the next X 20 years is to add 4 to 8 feet of wall to their waterfront. We don't want to do that here, but at the same time, we want to react to rising water, and we think this helps. Topographic features, C2, historic features shall be preserved wherever possible. Again, for the most part, we feel like we are respecting the existing topography. We're maintaining, for the most part, the existing terraces, which aren't as easy to see now, but we're respecting the original gardenscape. Tree removal, C4, everything we protect. No, we don't anticipate any trees being taken out, and we will have an arborist on staff. Fences and other landscape features. There will be filtration systems at the grade to handle runoff. We have the entire site runs to the water, even though in the parking lot we have done some mitigation work. But the entire site from Duke Gloucester through the entire St. Mary's property runs to the water. We want to help to manage that. C9 landscape plants, we will use native species, and we will prepare a landscape plan to submit. Contemporary materials, D28. We don't see any application here. And we will have archaeological study and archaeologists on staff as this project might go forward. And that's it. I went pretty quickly, I know.
Okay. That's fine. I think we'll have some discussions about those. Roberta, why don't you go through your general comments, and then looking at these guidelines, because it's very important that we provide feedback on the guidelines.
The first thing I wanted to mention was that I sent 2 additional comments later today, and I apologize for them being late, but there are a total of 8 comments that were submitted, and they were all added to the Google Drive, and also sent in emails to the commissioners as well as Jay and Don. Okay.
You got them. Yep.
We got him.
Yeah, the
All right.
last 2 came from Shelley Wrench and Robert Warden.
Yeah.
So Don and Jay, you got those. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Just the second kind of clarification from some of the comments, and that is that this is not a city project. There were several comments that said, "Oh, how can you, as a city, do this?" But I just want to clarify that I would not have the right to try to stop this at my office level. Any property owner has the right to request review by the commission of a proposed alteration to their property. Okay. Before I run through individual guidelines, I just wanted to give John Tower an opportunity to speak first, because he has a lot of experience related to the property. John, go ahead.
Thank you. So my review of the proposed living shoreline began with standing on the Spa Creek Bridge and looking at the Charles Carroll House garden. And what I saw was a view that Annapolitans and Eastporters had seen for 150 years. And there were just minor changes that have occurred, including the building of the bulkhead. But basically, the design of Charles Carroll's colonial gardens remains almost intact. The design intention that Charles Carroll had was to create order in his garden. And to do this, he created a garden wall, not really a seawall. It was a garden wall. And he built that at the waterfront. And that wall encapsulated his garden and gave it form. And it's a feature that remains and is unique in the colonial gardens of Annapolis. So Carroll's design also created a ratio of flat terraces and slopes. And this was in keeping with his pursuit of classical order, which one can see throughout the house, the garden, all the lands, and so on. And he plotted all of this mathematically to create a maximum impact from both the land and the water for his recently renovated house. So standing on the bridge, this elegant garden and this beautiful viewscape endures. And that's due at least in part to an unusually well-constructed seawall or garden wall that is now within the bulkhead. So the bridge view has become iconic, and it's seen by 1,000 people a day or more. Anyone who walks over the bridge, who is entering the historic district, this is really the first major historic view that they have, and it begins at the water. So the extant shoreline is a constant enrichment, both aesthetically and historically, of Charles Carroll's legacy. The proposed shoreline, it's well-intentioned, but I think its design would dramatically change a view and a shoreline created by the only Catholic signer of the Declaration of Independence. And this is a first-tier historic resource. The extension of the shoreline into a scallop section would dramatically alter the viewscape. I'm just going to end with a single guideline. I think it's A3. All projects which are visible from the water shall respect and reinforce the historic character of the district and shall respect traditional views and visual focal points. While the intention to educate the students of St. Mary's on the environment is important, the very public waterfront viewshed created by Charles Carroll and still existing would be dramatically and possibly irretrievably altered by this proposed project. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah. Is it okay to comment?
Of course.
So, John, I understand what you're saying, but I think it's also fair to point out that over the years, we have seen on that property so many different iterations of what that viewscape is. Everything from any number of buildings in various stages of disrepair, livestock, vineyards, the entire property in disrepair. I think it's also worth considering that since the grounds and the gardens have been cleaned up and restored in their terraced structure that Carroll first planned, the only thing we're talking about changing is that edge of the water, while we have been able to restore the rest of what has been there and clean it up dramatically. I would just argue that this is one more change in the long history of changes. And in this case, it's a change for the better over what might have been. So I view it that way. That's
Okay. Well, we're hearing you.
Thank you.
And we can discuss that as we go. Okay. Roberta, would you like to tell us your views on the guidelines specifically?
Okay. I'll start off by saying this is the 250th anniversary of the construction of the garden. So it began when Charles Carroll was having discussions with his son over a period of 5 years over what it should be made of, how it should look, what stones it should be composed of, and a lot of arguing back and forth. And so I lose. Jay, by the way, can you change the views so that we can see all of the commissioners now?
Actually, that's within your control.
Jay's control?
No,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
actually
sharing
within
your
your control, Roberta.
No, not me.
Oh, stop sharing, I guess.
Yes, stop sharing.
There we go.
Better?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just have a different view than the presentation made on the guidelines. I've been concerned from the first meeting about the level of intervention and also the potential violation of quite a few standards and guidelines. I highlighted everything that I thought was being violated, and so I'll just whip through those as fast as I can. In A3, I think it is not reinforcing the historic character of the district by irrevocably altering the bottom tier. I think that the design competes with the historic sense of space. I think it competes with the historic connection to the water, almost to the point of being visual clutter. Under C1, the landscape design and materials, by no means is this traditional in character. I do consider this a public way because it is a major water thoroughfare. Under C2, it states that the relationship of a structure to its site should not be altered except in instances of restorations is not a restoration. And it's, creating a native environment that is that we don't know existed. This environment definitely didn't exist. Speaking of my family, 12 generations have lived on the same property that faces two rivers, and nothing on that property looks anything like this. So to me, that's a false sense of history. Under C4, I can't imagine how such major construction wouldn't affect the root system of trees. Under C6, you have to go looking at other landscape features, not just fences. And other landscape features should relate to the architectural style of the building. This doesn't. Must be consistent with the overall style of the building. It isn't. Nothing was mentioned about lighting. I don't know if there's any lighting. That would be C7. under landscape plants, the plants should relate in size and scale to the building and spaces around. There's not enough information about that because they're not specified. We only learned that the black things are trees. It says the planting should approximate the period of the building. So no, it doesn't do that. The plantings that are there have gained significance. There is mention of man-made water devices. There was no real discussion of the lagoon that seems to have man-made water management devices, which are not natural. Nothing was mentioned about D1, and others may want to go into even more detail on this, but D1 are the Secretary of the Interior standards, and the project seems to violate certainly D1. The planning and the construction, oh, D1, I'm sorry, is that the property should be used for its historic purpose or placed in a use that requires minimal change. So clearly the historic purpose was to be used as the base of the garden and the base of the lowest tier. And as I said, it's described in records between 1770 and 1775. For example, he talks about the first rise 2 feet above the stone wall. He always called it a stone wall as opposed to a seawall because it was a garden wall. So it was the fourth tier and twin pavilions at each end. And recommendations have been made to restore that as opposed to removing the last tier of the garden. And the pavilions were still extant in 1852, and Charles Wilson Peel described the garden and the wall in 1804. To me, it also violates standard 2. The historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. 3, can't create a false sense of historical development, so that we keep hearing about the native environment, and this is just a contrived native environment that creates a false sense of history. 4, most properties change over time. This one's really important. Changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. So the gardens were restored by 1913 to their 4-terrace 18th century appearance. And therefore they've acquired significance. 5, distinctive features of a historic property shall be preserved. So that 4th tier is distinctive. 6, where the severity of deterioration requires replacement, the new feature shall match the old. This is completely different. Not sure about 7, chemical or physical treatments. I don't know what's being involved with equipment and processes. 8, archaeological resources shall be protected and preserved. We have some known features such as the stone wall, and there's also a stone drain that leads out from the side of the house that runs towards the west side of the property towards the proposed lagoon. And other archaeological resources are very likely to be determined. There's even discussion of well, I'll get to archaeology again in a minute. Standard 9, new construction shall not destroy historic materials. Well, obviously some features are going to be destroyed and archaeological features will be destroyed. 10, if something is removed in the future, you'll know exactly how it existed, and this intervention is permanent. Then moving on to other guidelines that weren't mentioned, D2 demolition. The demolition of contributing resources should not be approved. So the garden feature and the stone wall are contributing resources. I'm looking at all of that change that's going to happen all around the garden wall, the stone wall that is now protected because it has been submerged for so long. I feel certain that all this construction and exposing any of it is going to contribute to its demise. D3, preservation of significant original features. Distinguishing features shall be preserved. So, you know, the site has its original stone wall and its 1912 site features. Those site features are now 108 years old. Under historic masonry, again, the stone wall won't be protected as a result of the construction. D28, we just don't know about contemporary materials. D29, again, those man-made water management devices. And E1, archaeology. We have known archaeological resources. There is thought that we need a determination of eligibility on this site, if not for the whole property, certainly for the garden, because it is of national significance, being the only property in Annapolis that still has its garden all the way to the water. And as was stated in the archaeology in Annapolis excavations between 1987 and 1991, only a scant sample of data and information have been recovered from these areas. So it just worries me that I heard a comment at one point in a meeting from the applicants that, you know, not to worry, we're not going to touch the house. But I'm here to talk about, and so did John Tower, and so have many of these letters, that the garden is of national importance and should be preserved entirely. That's all I have.
Okay. So I'll open up to commissioners' comments. Who would like to chime in? Will, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Can I ask a couple of questions of Jay first?
Sure.
Is there a problem, an environmental problem on the site that will be addressed, improved, mediated by this project's construction?
Yes, I'm going to let Don address that if I can.
I did not catch anything other than a sort of generic, will improve the environment by doing this. Is there something specific? Is there some kind of leak, outfall, drainage issue that is going to be corrected by this that's currently causing problems?
Sure. We've got an old timber bulkhead that we're constantly repairing. If the bulkhead fails, then we're going to have catastrophic erosion of the shoreline, including the area behind the timber bulkhead where the seawall or the garden wall is located.
Okay, that's very, excuse me for interrupting, that's very clear. That's clear and succinct.
Yeah.
Why not repair the bulkhead?
Right now.
So environmentally,
right,
the runoff that we currently have off the parking lot, while a lot of it has been captured by the rain gardens that we installed a while back, we still have direct outflow pipes from the property, St. Mary's property, into Spa Creek.
Okay, All right, thank you. That makes that much clearer. I appreciate the information. And the other thing I wanted to ask it this time, so I can think more clearly about all the things that have been said and will be said, is you did make a reference, Jay, I think it was you, although that's not really important. You made a reference in the presentation about helping to deal with the rising waters around City Dock. I did not get that, and I'm not a hydrologist or anything like that, but how is this going to help that problem around City Dock?
Well, it doesn't do anything around City Dock, Will, but the entire creek, City Dock, Navy, St. Mary's, I mean, the entire creek is over the next, I don't know how long it's going to be, 10 years, 20, 50 years, our lifetime and beyond. Obviously, we're going to have rising waters, which means the bulkhead itself will need to be replaced. Specifically, this type of system does not create a batterboard for the water. It allows the water to raise up, it rise over the bulkhead and recede of its own accord. So,
okay, that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all. Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Other commissioners?
Yeah.
Pat, you raising your hand? Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. Am I off mute? Oh, I'm off mute. You mentioned several different organizations that are in support of this, the DNR Spa Creek Conservancy being two of them. What has Maryland Historic Trust had to say about this?
So, working for St. Mary's, there are a couple of easements that MHT has with the Carroll property. I have been told that the easements are for the building itself and that MHT's purview extends to the exterior skin of the house, but does not extend to the yard and the gardens.
Yeah, I can chime in
I would,
a little bit.
yeah, can you?
Yeah, I can chime in, and Don is exactly correct. Nonetheless, when my understanding is that since DNR is involved, they are the ones that need to get the approvals from MHT for. And so, Don, where are you with that?
I don't think that's been addressed. I don't know that DNR is aware that they need to be in any kind of approval process with MHT, since the project is on the waterfront and doesn't include the house itself.
I have another comment. I have a comment.
Yeah, Don, I'll just tell you, I think you might want to check that. Just
Okay.
tell you.
All right.
Yeah, in one of the letters, it says, and I believe this to be true, the Maryland Historical Trust reviews projects associated with the DNR resiliency through restoration initiative to assess potential effects on historic properties. And then it goes on to. Do you want comments now, Tim, or do you want?
Yeah, keep, yep, absolutely, sure.
Okay, I'm going to give my comments. First of all, I'm in complete agreement with Mr. Tower and Ms. Lehner. And just to pull out a few of their comments, I don't need to repeat them. This is an iconic view. Yes, it's had changes, but the terraces, the slopes, the classical order of the elegant garden, the viewscape, this would be a complete change to that viewscape. I'm going to quote one of the letters. There's no doubt that living shorelines are a worthy endeavor, but this is not the place for that. And I absolutely believe that this major change would not comply with not just our guidelines that Ms. Lehner called out, but certainly the Secretary of the Interior's standards that she called out. Number one, number two, I won't go through the whole thing but I am in complete agreement with her. I think this is a a worthy thought, but this is not the place. If anything, I think should be looking at, Shelley Wrench sent in a letter from the study that she was a part of that talks about restoration and of this, I'm trying to look for her exact wording and I can't find it. But anyway, I just believe this would be a complete change, and it is what we are to safeguard against. So that's my comments. This is a non-starter for me in a full application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Kim, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I agree with Pat. I mean, we're seeing a significant landscape affected. There are shorelines in Annapolis, lots of other shorelines in Annapolis that could benefit from various restoration activities, and there's a variety of them proposed, and we have a lot of state programs offering them. I don't think that the Carroll House is the pilot project we want to put out there, because I really do think that there's a unique landscape there in the Fallen Gardens to be preserved, and a documentation of the Fallen Gardens. So I really believe that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bobby, you're on mute, by the way, Bobby.
Oh, I'm unmuted.
There you go. Good.
I really can't say much more than we've heard already, but I am in full agreement with Pat, with Roberta, with John, with everything that I've heard before, without getting down in the weeds, no pun intended. I really look to the Secretary of the Interior standards, the big picture of preserving the views, the features, everything that currently exists. And I too would add my voice that I commend St. Mary's for trying to do something environmentally brave and improve their property and potentially look to the future. But as others have said, I have to add my voice to say that while that's a great idea, this is not the place to do it. When I come over that bridge, that view is one of the faces of Annapolis. It's one of the, as Roberta called it, it's one of the iconic views of Annapolis. And I'll be honest, I had to drive down to the end of the street that's there. What's the street with the pumping station down there and the little dock?
Shipwright.
Yeah. I had to go down there and I climbed over the wall and I went out on the dock because I'm usually the one driving when we come over the bridge. And I wanted to have time to actually enjoy that view. So I stood there for like 15 minutes while my husband paced on his phone. And I really took in the detail on that bulkhead that's there and the beauty of the lawn as it goes up towards the house and everything. It really is something that exists nowhere else in our town. And I would encourage us to keep that in the back of our minds at all times when looking at this pre-app. And again, if it comes to an application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. Also, I'm in concurrence with everyone, and with particularly what Roberta said in terms of the exact guidelines, and they kind of, to a certain extent, refute what the applicant has said about the guidelines, and I kind of am looking at each one and kind of favoring Roberta's reading of it. One comment I want to go back to what Don understood, which caught my attention. Yeah, the garden has changed over time. It did go through a lot of visual changes. The landform did not change significantly, and it was restored. The one thing that has not changed is the straight line of the garden edge. And from a design point of view, that's very important. It's a very important landscape feature. It is geometrically a triangle that you can look this up. It's a line from the center line of the house. That's it's not the hypotenuse, it's the whatever, it's the long leg of a triangle. That feature has not changed in 250 years. And this obviously changes that. So to me, just that change is significant enough to, then that can be any number of the guidelines that we've talked about. Design features should not be changed. And that's the one that persuades me that this is really not a feasible project. Yes, Will.
Thank you. I agree with what John, Roberta, and all of my fellow commissioners have said. And I want to just add that I'm most moved by the fact that when we talk about the great mansions of the colonial period that are extant, we cannot say about any one of them that we can look at exactly what any of the views were like when they were constructed. And this one was designed and constructed under the supervision of a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And a substantial change, which this would be, is to me a complete non-starter.
All right. So back to
Tim?
Jay and yes.
Before you go any further, would you mind officially naming, or I can name those who submitted comments, because
I will do that. I will do that right now. Yes, thank you. I was just about to ask
because
for that. Thank you. I got them.
do rely, they're sent to me by email, and I just want to make sure that everyone is recognized. And
Yes,
if
thank
anyone
you.
is not named, I apologize, and I will add it to the record quickly.
Yeah, as part of this process, these emails will become part of the record, and I'll list them. Lee Ward Mayer, Marcy Taylor Toma, Todd Garfinkel, Rock Tays, Historic Annapolis, signed by Robert Clark and Nicholas Redding for Preservation Maryland, Sharon Kennedy, Shelley Wrench, and Robert Warden. So those should all be in the record.
That's what I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've heard a lot, Don and Jay, and if you'd like to respond to some of the comments, please, please do.
Well, I think while they're all great comments, and I don't think we disagree with you on the importance of the Carroll property, I think our disagreement might be where the level of disturbance comes into play. I know some of you have seen the shoreline project that was done over at St. John's College. And I'd almost like to try to paint a picture of a broad scale of the property where the shoreline, whether it's the Carroll property or the St. John's College property, where that shoreline is a line of delineation. And while that line of delineation changes from being a stone garden wall that it once was to the current wooden bulkhead that it now is, to a visually straight line, if you're looking at it from the bridge, of a vegetated shoreline rather than a wooden bulkhead straight line, that the view above that line, everything above that line remains the same. And I think that the benefits of the project, which in turn help preserve everything above that line over time, particularly with sea level rise, actually serves to protect the very features that are so important to protecting for the future. So, two different ways to look at it. If we don't do something, the bulkhead's going to eventually fail. We're going to have then the historic stone garden wall being exposed, washed out, and failing. And the land, the whole shoreline that makes up that lower terrace of this garden is then going to be exposed to erosion and destruction. And then you're really going to have a significant negative change to that view shed that something like a living shoreline will help protect and preserve into the future. So
We'll be back.
yeah,
We'll be back.
Okay. All right, yeah. Pat, do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to add something to the record of, I think there were 8 letters, is that correct? Of the 8 of the 8 letters
5, 6,
sent
7,
in,
8.
I believe that 7 of the letters were echoing what the commission and staff said, that this is the wrong place for this project. And one letter
And one was in
from-
support.
was in support. And just to add to the record, past Chair Sharon Kennedy in her letter makes some comments about why St. John's living shoreline, why that was passed and why it is so dramatically different from the St. Mary's proposed project. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments, thoughts? All right, I'll summarize. The commissioners unanimously feel the project is not feasible based on the number of guidelines. The design that is presented at this point is not in compliance with many of the guidelines that Roberta mentioned, and I don't need to go through them one by one. But in most particular case, that it's not compliant with our baseline, which is the Secretariat of Interior Standards. If we didn't have any of our guidelines at all, we would go to those, and it's not in compliance with those guidelines, most of them. So I'm afraid that's what we are going to have to leave it there, I guess. So look forward to further conversation. I do think it's a worthy project, of course, and I can't say, did we give you what you wanted this time?
Thanks so much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Yeah, bye.
That's one more item on the agenda. We have an administrative meeting later in the month, but Commissioner Pat Zeno will not be attending. This will be her last meeting, and I can't say enough about how important she has been for more than 12 years as a voice of detail and reason, not backing down sometimes, and also served as chair, which is not an easy job, as we all know. So I want to thank her from the bottom of my heart. She's been a great colleague, and I've learned a lot over the years and seen things from different points of view, thanks to her. So I want
Thank you.
And there's a virtual glass of wine to thank her. So just a round of applause.
Thank
Here,
you.
here.
Thank you. It's been.
Huzzah.
Thank you.
It's been interesting sometimes, as everybody knows, brutal and sometimes lots of fun, but it's always been interesting, and the best has been working with really terrific people, including you, Tammy, who your picture's not showing. But anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And we'll miss you on those late nights.
Yeah, but now I can send in letters and testify.
Ooh, please do. Please stay active.
Look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Any other business for the good of the order?
What time are we starting next week for the training? Is it at 7 or is it at 6?
That would be 6.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
All right, so this is my last meeting, but it wouldn't be, hey, what the heck? I might as well stick my 2 cents in about something. I am very concerned about what's happening downtown and the lack of HPC or preservation oversight. I understand that these are emergency times or odd times, and that the city is doing what they can to help the businesses. That being said, so many standards for downtown have gone by the wayside. And I hope as things get into more of a rhythm, because it seems like things are getting at least not normal, but into a rhythm, that there can be some type of oversight to get the city looking really the way the historic district should look, you know. And I can go into many, many concerns. I'm sure all of us have been downtown and seen it. The excessive signage on the restaurants and the bars, the plastic bollards or whatever those things are every place. Hopefully they could be replaced at some point in time with plants, but anyway, or something to the lack of cleanliness downtown, the weeds that have sprung up around. It's really been very concerning. So again, I understand these are extraordinary times and difficult times, but I hate to see what's happening to downtown happen. So that's all I want to say.
All right.
I second that.
Thank you.
Constructively, we would like to think there's some kind of date certain that these things would be removed, and that maybe is something that I can work with Roberta on.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And it's not just Roberta. I mean, it's the economic development people. It's the mayor. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay.
Tim, will there be an August meeting?
No, we have no meetings in August.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yep. No, there's no.
Do we have any sense, Tim, of if and when we're going back to live meetings now that some things are starting to change?
I haven't heard it. I haven't heard anything, and I'll ask that though. Roberta, have you heard any rumblings? In fact, I think it's going
The
the other way.
emergency order is still in effect, so.
And it would at least be a while after that. The City Council did something new last night. They passed, which will help us. You're able to phone in and voicemail or leave audio testimony as opposed to having it have to write it, which means it can be played live at a meeting. I guess that's better, but we'll miss.
Tim, just my thoughts, because I'm dealing with public hearings all the time.
Yeah.
I think that the future is a hybrid meeting.
Yeah.
That some people are going to be allowed to, come in from work or wherever they are, and some people will be in person. It won't be an in-person requirement anymore. And I actually think that's more open to people who are working or have other schedules.
Yeah. The big change for us would be to allow the public to join the meeting as a participant and actually give comments live. And I'm not sure when or if that's possible, or that's what people are clamoring for.
Well, I'm working with a planning board, and we're meeting virtually every week, and we have a deadline when people have to sign up to talk, and then we assign them a time. And I can clue you in on some of the particulars of that, but it's worked pretty well in Prince George's County, so I can.
Well, that'd be interesting. I'll feed that information to Hillary, who's kind of at the switch. She's doing a great job. Surface,
Well, we're required to have a public hearing,
Interesting, yeah.
Kim, would that be on Zoom?
Kim,
are you
no, it's
using
not.
Zoom
No,
for
it's not, because Zoom is not acceptable to the commission I work for because of hacking concerns. So we are on GoToMeeting, and we don't do public meetings on Zoom. No.
Yeah. What do you use?
GoToMeeting.
GoToMeeting. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I think you're right. This isn't going away. It's going to be some combination for quite a while.
I'm not obviously a tech expert on this, and I constantly have trouble going on to team meetings. But anyway, I will say that I do have some experience with public hearings that are acceptable at a county level and how we handle those in Prince George's County. And we've been doing it for about 4 months now.
Okay. Good input. And like I said, I'll bring it up to Hillary just to get a sense, first of all, if we are ever going to go live and probably never going to completely live, how this is going to play out. What's the planning for the long term? Okay. Any other business? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. See everybody next
Bye
Thursday.
now.
Almost every